Despite the fact that we live in a beautiful world of color in the modern age, there are times when you may want to make a photograph turn into black and white. Maybe you want to tweak it a little bit so it looks kind of like an older photograph, maybe something stained with coffee or tea. And that's what we're going to take a look at today at this portrait that I have inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2024. All right, so this is a photo that I took at Scott Kelby workshop. This was back in 2011. He did one hands-on workshop for his Light It, Shoot It, Retouch It tour. So he's had the tour where he did all of his presentation. This is one where a bunch of us got to go inside of a studio. We had a model who came in and helped us out. And this was one of the simple setups with a softbox up here, lighting this. And then from the back, you can see there's a kicker light to light her hair and a little fan to get some motion going. We knew that this light stand was going to be in the shot, but also we knew that we could remove that. So what I want to do is kind of get rid of this stand. I'm going to do a little bit of skin retouching to her, then I'm going to convert it to black and white. Why would I want this photo to be black and white? You can see that there's an overall yellow kind of tone here. From her skin tone, her blonde hair, even the top that she's wearing, it all works together. But there's something about the skin tone, well, not the skin tone, but there's something about the overall yellow color cast that I think is just a little bit off. And quite honestly, one of the best ways to deal with a photograph that you otherwise like, except for the color, is to make a black and white conversion. So let's go ahead and start off with erasing this. And what I want to do is, before I get to black and white, I want to get rid of this thing. And I also want to do our skin retouching. So I'm going to come over here and let's see if we can't get our perfect eraser. If you click on this brush and it doesn't say perfect eraser, come over here to this thing and you'll see a perfect eraser is right there. So I'm going to get rid of this part first. Let that go away. And that's why I did it, because you see how I just left a little bit over there. So sometimes that gets a little bit tricky when there's different sizes of the item that you want to move. Now that this is all straight, I should be able to come down the whole way. Let go of the mouse and it should just get rid of that. And there we go. All right, so I've got choices now. I can go over to effects. I could do my black and white conversion, or I could do my skin retouching. I want to do the skin retouching in color first, because I'll show you here, there's a time where we're going to want to select her skin tone. And once you've selected that in black and white, it's not going to have quite the same effect. So it's kind of an order of operations. I'm going to click Add Filter, and we'll go over here to Skin Retouching. So we've got this, and now we can see she doesn't really have blemishes. There are a couple of little bumps in here, but I'm going to go ahead and slide this up. I usually start kind of halfway and see if I'm happy with that. Sometimes if there's enough you can go over. I don't want to go too far, because that just kind of really, the more you do that, the more it degrades the skin. I am going to smooth this quite a bit. And you can see that there's a very different look to her arms there than there was over here. So I like that. I'm going to try to remove that shine on her forehead. And this one is going to go up quite a bit. And it's kind of evened that out. Now, this skin color dropper, you can see there's a selection already, but I'm going to hit this one. And I'm going to choose where I want this skin color to work. And I'm probably going to choose down here. Usually I like to do it on the cheek, but since I've got some shadow there, I'm going to choose this. And then that's just really changed how the rest of the skin retouching works. So I've changed that. This range will define how far you want to allow that to go. So you can bring it all the way up to 100%. I'm going to undo that and just leave it right there. And we'll take a look at the evenness. We can bring that up a bit more. So again, we still have that kind of yellow color cast. But as far as the skin retouching, I'm satisfied with what we have there. So now let's go ahead and add our filter. We come over here, you'll see we have a filter for black and white, and it does an immediate conversion. So already I'm happier with that. So I come down here and look at before and after. It's going to show me what we looked like before with our other, with having removed that light stand that was over there. And now we've got this. So we've got a few different options. This opacity slider, if you want to have a desaturated look, you can bring this all the way down to there. And then you can kind of have a desaturated look if you want to do that. But we're going for black and white. Next, we've got a number of styles. This works if you're looking for a quick shortcut. There are 3 of them here, or actually 4 of them here. So it's kind of like stoplight colors. Like there's a green filter, a yellow filter, a red filter, an infrared filter, which I've never liked that. But if you come over here to where it says more, you'll see we have a number of different choices. And you can just kind of hover over them and it'll show you what it looks like and how much you want to do it. Now, notice that the background and everything is getting the same filter. That's because I did not select a mask of just the subject. So if you wanted to change that, you could probably go up and change the mask over here. We'll go up to our masking. And let's say that we want to look for people, and it will give us a mask right in there. Now, it's not perfect. You can see that it's not selecting our hair on some of those strands. You probably have to go in with a refined brush and fix that. But I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not trying to do any masking here. And if you don't like what you have, there is a reset click right here. So that gets rid of all of these settings. This next section for conversion, there's a couple of options here. Color response shows you all of these sliders, or you can use the channel mixer, which will just go ahead and let you have a slider there. We're going to go to the color response, and you notice there's an auto setting. So if you want to use that, you can click that and go with whatever settings it did. You've got a little magic wand over here. But I'm going to turn the auto off. And what I really want to do is I just want to work with kind of the yellow colors. So that would be the red and the yellow. I'm going to bring these up a little bit. And that gives me just a slight little change. Now, some of these other sliders, because we don't have these colors in here, it's not going to filter off of them. So it's not really going to make much of a difference. So I'm going to leave those. And now we're going to go down to tone. Again, you have auto off and auto on. I really don't like that. I think it's too washed out. You can see the light coming down from there, her skin, her top, everything. I just don't like it. But I always think it's worth looking at the auto. Now we've got these colors. Take a look on the slider. You can see for brightness, it's darker over here, it's lighter over there. That gives you an indication of what's going to happen. So if I bring the brightness up, it's going to go there. If I bring it down, it's going to make it darker. You can just double click on the label and it'll bring it back to center. What I'm going to play with more is I'm going to bring my whites down and I'm going to bring the blacks down. I'm looking for a little bit more contrast. And I might play with the shadows a bit to see how I like that. Play with the highlights a little bit. These are very subtle changes, and some of them I can't even tell at all. Like with the highlights right now, I'm not seeing much of any difference. I could also play with the contrast. That's going to have a bigger difference. And there's no right or wrong with these sliders. This is really to your taste. Now, I've washed her out too much there. I've got a lot of contrast there, so I'm going to bring this contrast back down. And I think that evened out the skin tone a little bit better. I don't mind having a bright spot here and a dark spot there. I do want some contrast. But how much? Well, that's really up to your taste. All right, so that's what we've got with the tone. Next, let's go down to where it says toner. You've got some options here. You can see that there is a place for the highlights, and then down below, there's a place for the shadows. And you can change these colors. So for example, if you want the highlights to be something, on a Mac, it'll bring up this little color selector over here, and you can move that around to whatever you want. You could use the eyedropper and select something over here. But that's after we've done our conversion. So I really don't want to do that. You notice that we can hit this little button and it's inverting between the highlights and the shadows. So if you decide that one color looks better for shadows than highlights, you can swap those back and forth. But we're going to go back over here to none. And we can change the highlights, how the hue is going to look. We can change the amount. So you'll need to bring up the amount slider first in order to have this hue change work on something. And you may not want to bring up the amount quite that much, particularly if you're only trying to fix the highlights. This balance will cover the balance between your shadows and your highlights. So you can see as we're changing that. Now, while I've got this up here, let me go ahead and reset this again. So you can see how that's changing based upon whether this darker color is in the highlights or is in the shadows. So it gives you different looks. I'm going to bring the amount slider down on all of these because again, I don't really like any of those. But I do want to point out something else. There's a button down here. If you check this to preserve whites and blacks, now as I bring up the amount slider, it's not affecting the black background. It's only affecting that. So it's saving the blacks. If there's any place where there's white, it'll be saving that. And then you might be able to get a different look for your overall look with the toner setting. So if you wanted that warm color on her, but you wanted to preserve your blacks and whites, check that button. If I turn this off, you can see how it's affected the entire thing. So sometimes this checkbox to preserve the whites and blacks may be what you want, depending upon your background, rather than using masking, because the masking, sometimes you might have to do more work to go back and use the refine brush. So I'm going to leave that on. And now that I've got my shadows over here with this color tone, I could also bring up this aspect over here and it'll affect the highlights, but I'm going to bring that down. I'm kind of happy where I am. Now, if you don't want to do a custom thing, again, we have a number of options. So you can do sepia, different versions. You can do selenium. And as you can see through all these different types, the color on the photograph changes as we go through. I'm not going to bring them all up. I'm just going to go back to none. And I've got my amount sliders down. And that's what you can do with customizing what the toner is going to look like. So you've got the options to change the highlight color, the shadows color. You can change the hue, the amount. You can change the balance mix. But my favorite button, honestly, is this little selection over here to preserve the whites and blacks. The last thing we have is film grain. So I'm going to open up this filter, and then you'll see we have a menu here of different types of film. I'm not big on film grain, to be honest with you, but it's nice that we've got a few different ones here. You kind of need to know what these things are in order to see what result you're going to get. So we can change this to how much film grain you want, the size of the grain. So as we do this more and more, you can see that it's really putting a lot of grain on her face. And then you can just double click this to bring this back down. So I'm going to actually go back to none. On this photo, I just don't want any film grain. So when it's on none, these sliders reset, or basically they're grayed out, so they're not affecting anything. But you can choose this, and if you want to experiment with some of these different types of film grain, if that works for the photograph that you have, by all means, go for it. All right, that is a quick look at how to do a black and white conversion inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2024. There's a lot of power here. There are a lot of tools. I kind of like a rather simple black and white look for myself, but there are times when maybe I do want that sepia toning. Maybe I do want to have that balance, for a custom tone that's going on in here. And the fact that they give you all these options really makes it easy to customize your photo to the way that you think it should look. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about using the black and white tool inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2024, please let me know in the questions below or the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer as best I can. Thank you so much. I'll see you again in the next video.